Now to tell us how AI interfaces with our evolving world are Jason Vazzano, CEO and co-founder of Vectorform, and Dr. Ramses Alcaide, the CEO and founder of Neurable, a brain-computer interface company. Please make them welcome. Guys, come on out.
Good afternoon. Is everybody getting hyped up after lunch? All right. Well, I'm Jason Vazzano. I'm the CEO of Vectorform. At Vectorform, we invent digital products and experiences. Our goal is to really help companies define their future and solve the complex problems to get there. With a focus on IoT, AR, VR, and AI, our goal is to help build anticipatory customer experiences. We not only invent digital products and experiences, but we also invent digital businesses as well. So we spun off 5 companies to date, often with corporate partners. And I'm very excited to be here today with my friend Ramses. Ramses, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Ramses Alcaide. Just some background on our company. We're called Neurable. We've been working on brain-computer interfaces. And these devices allow us to interpret brain activity and then turn that into actions and commands. And so this has a huge implication in the AI space. We've been around for 3 years incorporated, but I've been working on this through my PhD for about 8 years now. And we've spun up the company and since then moved to Boston from Michigan. We're both Detroiters, so go blue.
Yeah, so Ramses, there's a lot of skeptics. You know, we see MR, AR, VR. You know, the technology's not there. It's cumbersome, wires everywhere, and you know, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better interface, and you've really been leading the charge on this BCI. What is BCI?
Yeah, a brain-computer interface is basically a fancy way of saying taking brain activity and interpreting it to control a computer. And while that sounds like science fiction, it's something that's been around since the 80s. The main issue that exists is right now interpreting brain activity is 1, very slow, and 2, it's very imprecise, so you get unreliable data. And what we've been working on as a company is developing machine learning techniques using more modern day approaches in order to increase reliability and increase speed so that they're actually scalable at a mass market level. And that's kind of what this little device here I have in front of you guys today is. This is a brain-computer interface. It has our sensors in the back here. There's 6 of them. Traditionally, when you look at brain-computer interfaces, people think of these gel caps with 30 to 100 electrodes. We're only using 6. But with these 6, we're able to get really robust lab-grade information that's actually usable and scalable. This is for virtual reality. This is an HTC Vive, and we use it for a lot of training applications.
So talk to me a little bit about some of the applications, specifically training. Why have a BCI interface in a training application?
Yeah, there's actually a few areas where a lot of our customers use this in, and I think we have a few slides too where we can kind of pull those up.
Yeah.
So the first one is actually in consumer analytics and analytics in general. So when you're looking at an individual through a training experience, for example, they go through a lot of emotional changes. And these emotional changes, for example, stress, can be used to further augment their learning because a little bit of stress actually makes people perform better and learn better. But too much is detrimental. And so by looking at these brain patterns, we're able to tune the environment and optimize it for them. But in addition to that, we're also able to look at high-level pieces of information. For example, are their decision making? Is this something that is exciting to them or is stimulating to them in some way? And that helps us understand decision making. And the second slide up here is employee training. And not only is the stress information valuable, but now we're also talking about running a novice user through an environment that an expert has gone through and then preventing them to graduate until they're able to replicate the same brain patterns. And so that way we know when they're going to go do these dangerous activities like climbing up ladders, changing transformers, they're in a safe environment both cognitively and mentally.
That's awesome. So, the idea of looking at high consequence training and saying, okay, we can measure. What exactly are we measuring off the brain?
Yeah, the brain signals that we pick up with these sensors are very gross, large level signals. So we can pick up information related to stress, information related to fatigue, and information related to moments of emotional and cognitive meaningfulness. And those pieces of information allow us to understand how a person is learning. And so you can see how we're creating the next generation of learners. We can shorten training times, we can increase retention, and then as this technology becomes scalable, which is something that we're partnering with you guys on doing, now you can see this on the field, scaling with a whole bunch of people just wearing wearable devices, but now we're increasing safety, we're increasing ROI in those kinds of applications.
Yeah. So, besides what you just mentioned, what are some additional thoughts of what else with this technology, what else could you secure from the brain? What other information could you obtain?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of information there that we're just starting to tap into on the research and development side. I can't speak to too much of it tonight, but the three main areas, like I said, are employee training, high consequence training. There's also being able to interact with your technology. And what you were touching on earlier, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this too, is how do we create the next generation of augmented technologies?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, in order to create this synergistic world, we need to accomplish two things, which is mobile form factors and then brain-computer interfaces, specifically effective computing or emotional understanding and telekinesis. And that's really the two areas that we're focused on our company. But I'd love to hear your opinion on how you see that scaling forward.
Yeah, Ramses. So, when you take some of the emerging technology and, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, it seems so futuristic, it seems so far out. But in reality, as in the case study that we showed earlier at DTE Energy, we're able to apply this technology now. And I think there's a lot of organizations out there who will say, hey, rationalize many reasons as to why the technology is not ready. VR is not ready for this reason. The cores are a safety hazard, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that we have to begin to adopt and integrate these technologies into the workforce. The technology really is the easy part of these scenarios. Getting our culture and our technology integrated into the organization allows us to avoid what we call technology or technology culture debt. We just can't wait, in my opinion, to let these technologies evolve to a certain point of perfection, because at DTE Energy, we're always searching, for all of our clients for the most compelling business case. And for VR or XR with Neurable technology, for us it was about high consequence training, and that was really what showed off the highest return on investment. What we didn't anticipate was the amount of organizational resistance, because the technology was so good, and that people were fearful that it potentially could replace their job. So that's why it's really important to kind of develop a culture of experimentation, continue to integrate this technology into current initiatives that you're working on to make sure that the workforce really will embrace the technology.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And actually, I just want to ask the audience a question, just show of hands. How many of you guys have heard of brain-computer interfaces?
A fair amount.
A decent amount, but probably less than 5% of the audience, right? And this is really touches on the bigger picture, which is education, right? Most people don't even know that what we're doing is a possibility.
Yeah.
And most people don't even, luckily we're at a FutureX live event. That's huge, right? You guys know what VR is probably. But if you go to any other type of event and you tell somebody VR, they actually will not know the acronym. There's this great statistic that came out that said that less than 1% of the population has experienced or know what VR is. And so you can imagine how much farther along of a tiny little gap it is for brain-computer interfaces. And so there's this huge level of education that needs to be overcome. But what a lot of the partners that we've been working on recently, at least, have touched on is that right now it's the formative time for brain-computer interfaces. And if you don't invest that time and energy now, you're going to have this huge, huge technical debt that happens when people start to outrun you. and then you have to customize the technology and work with partners to finally get it back on your side. And so that's where we've been getting a lot of the early believers. And really, two things needed to be accomplished. One, it needed to work.
Yeah.
And thus far, a lot of people's experiences with brain-computer interfaces has been pretty crappy. And so, you know, doing our demos, educating people, that's like a full-time effort, because people have to understand that it works, and people have to understand what the value is behind it. And so, and those two things are very unclear for the majority of people who work with it.
So what you're showing with Neurable today is that brain interface doesn't have to be invasive. You guys are able to really put together a minimally invasive technology to secure this data in a meaningful and reliable way. Do you continue to see modifications in this form factor?
Yeah, you know, surprisingly, so this right here, like I said, had 6 electrodes. We started 8 years ago with 128 sensors on a person's head, and we had to inject gel underneath each electrode. So I don't know how many of you guys want to have gel in your hair when you step outside of your work training, you know, that you're doing, but that's just awful, right? And in addition to that, you know, I worked with children who had severe cerebral palsy, and we had to teach them how to answer cognitive assessment questions, but it used to take about 20 seconds to get a yes or no response. So you can imagine how awful that would be if you were the user, right? And so now 6 is actually outdated for us. We're actually down to 2, and we're moving toward even more mobile form factors that are that you're actually just going to be able to put on. So imagine putting on your daily work gear, whether it's a hard hat or some ear protection, and then those are your sensors. And you can see how that becomes more scalable, both from the training point of view, but then also from the on the field point of view.
In terms of some of the data that you're securing from a workforce, let's say, and looking at that data in aggregate, what is the value from your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, really, there's one huge value on the cognitive analytics end, and that is to create a better employee. To what we believe in, and what the companies we work with believe in, is that the current worker is the athlete of their environment, right? So we treat athletes right now with so much work. You know, we have them go through the highest level of training, et cetera, and performance. But we can do that with the people that we work with too. And it's not just to get more work out of them, but it's also to be able to connect to them in a way that helps them emotionally, that helps them be able to, you know, perform and deliver consistently. And just having somebody and monitoring that level of information is a huge value add to a lot of our customers. You can prevent accidents because you're not overworking people. And these are pieces and bits of information that we can gather, and we can only do it with brain-computer interfaces in a reliable way.
So you mentioned earlier kind of understanding the stress level that an individual's at. And how do you use that information to adjust content or have an adaptive experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it an example from the DT trainer that we're working with. So right now, the DT trainer, you can kind of see a picture of it on the slides if they pull them up. But in this one, you have an employee walking through an entire simulation. They're going up a ladder, they're going to transformer, they're changing things, they're doing work. And people get injured severely every single year because of this kind of work.
Yeah.
Right? And this is just one application. So if we're able to help monitor and help coach them through the anxiety that they're going to go through, that creates a better workforce, that creates a safer workforce. And as it becomes more mobile, now we're able to scale that up. But my question to you that I've been trying to pull to you all day, and you said save it for here, is how do we scale this into companies?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, that is really sort of at Vectorform, what we're passionate about is how do we deliver emerging technology at scale. And, you know, as I said before, it really does start with a compelling business case, you know, understanding the rationale of why an organization should adopt this. And then secondly, you know, what are some of the key initiatives that are going on within an organization so that you're really not, you know, sort of creating all new momentum. The technology itself, you know, requires a lot of human change, and there's going to be a lot of natural resistance with that. So leveraging sort of an initiative mantra or initiative within an organization can really help drive some initial champions, and defining those champions to ultimately push it horizontally across the organization is definitely a key way to do that. In our experience, we've had a tremendous amount of success really by understanding large problems that are impacting organizations. We're seeing many retiring workforces. Some of our clients, 50% of their workforce will be retiring in 2 years, their field workforce. So they have to make significant investments in ways that will engage a younger workforce. I think mixed reality does offer that. And then combined with the BCI interface from Neurable, we're able to get very meaningful data that can really inform the training safety officer in a high impact way.
Gotcha. And so, as you're going through the scaling with businesses, how do you see it going outside of just training?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. I think the adaptive experience, or the idea of an experience really being dynamic to a user, a workforce, allowing it to truly be unbiased, and really changing the game on training is something that I see certainly there. But the idea of really engaging and mitigating risk in all business activities is really limitless.
So I'm going to do another poll out here to the audience. High level, how many of you guys work in any high consequence training applications? Not many? 2, 3, 4? Okay. What about any type of education application? A little bit more, okay. What about consumer insights? A lot more. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we're all here because we're looking at technology that we think is going to help boost us to the next level, and obviously mixed reality is a big push toward that. And what I would say is kind of looking at the audience. The two big areas are consumer insights and there was some in education. And just to share a story to you guys about at least the education side of things. Right now, there's this giant push by HTC toward bringing mixed reality to schools. They have classrooms where instead of walking in with you in a computer lab, there's you and an HTC Vive. Like, how crazy is that? Imagine that as your classroom, right? Here in the United States, we haven't even considered that, and part of the reason I was talking to their president at HTC, Alvin, and he was telling me that their economy has been growing so much and so quickly that to some degree they kind of skipped the PC age. They went straight from, being very industrial factory-based to immediately having VR, right? And so to them, talk to some of these individuals and they're like, why use a computer? We have virtual reality. We can just be inside the lesson, right? And that's something that hasn't caught on here in the United States. But I can quickly see how using mixed reality and being informed with brain-computer interfaces, we're going to create individuals who are learning faster, who can connect with the material far better than what we're doing. And really everything that we've done in human society is accelerating education. It's crazy to think that you can pick up a math book and it took people hundreds of years to figure out one formula sometimes on how everything works and prove it out and get the proof going. And we're able to learn it in a week, right? And that's what VR and brain-computer interfaces have to deliver when it comes to the larger aspect of education or informing individuals.
That's awesome, Ramses. Thank you. Well, both Ramsey and I are available after the break. Should you have any questions, be happy to continue the conversation on BCI, VR, AI, etc. But thank you all very much, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Thank you. Good job.